we stand at a crucial juncture. We have witnessed firsthand the detrimental effects of unplanned development in the recent years, the indiscriminate cutting of our hills, the unsustainable filling of our low-lying areas, and the pressure brought by increased flow area ratios. This action has led to tangible consequences, including increasing water security, scarcity, and power shortage, threatening our very fabric of our state. Therefore, the formulation of a new comprehensive and sustainable regional plan is not just desirable, it is an urgent necessity to safeguard Goa's future. It is important to acknowledge the proactive role of the organizing body, Goa's nature, Goa's future, which has spearheaded a significant movement advocating for this much needed new regional plan. Their effort in raising awareness to protest at various locations across Goa has been instrumental in bringing this crucial issue to the forefront and galvanizing public attention. For Goa Nature, Goa Future campaign was launched out of love for our land and a deep concern for the future. What began as a small group of concerned citizens has now blossomed into a broad movement spanning the state. As conveyor of this campaign, I have been humbled and inspired by the energy and commitment of so many Goa'S who have joined hands with us. Over the past years, our team and volunteers have worked tirelessly to raise awareness and push for change. In fact, this conference is the communication of a journey that included numerous public meetings and grassroots consultations across Goa. Let me highlight a few key efforts of our organizing group. We organized a series of peaceful protest meetings in villages and towns to listen to the people concerned and build public support for the new plan. From Chinchilin in the south to Arambol in the north, from Lotolin to Kolwi, a campaign traveled the length and breadth of Goa. Each meeting saw citizens coming out in large numbers, a clear indication that Goans are deeply care about land development. The Bamboli meet last October was one such gathering where people from all parts of Goa held placards demanding new regional plan and an end to unsustainable land conversion. The sight of Goans united with the slogan Goa's nature, Goa's future has been truly heartening.
Hello.
We are particularly honored to have here with us today a distinguished panel of speakers, each bringing a wealth of knowledge and experience in their critical discussion. We warmly welcome Dr. Solano da Silva, who will be sharing his insight on spot zoning and bulk zoning, subverting Regional Plan 2001 and Regional Plan 2011. He analyzes how this practice has potentially compromised past regional plans, will be invaluable in guiding our future approach. We are also delighted to have Sri Abhijit Prabhudesai, who will be presenting on planning without people, how RP21 got compromised. His deep understanding of environmental issues and local concern will undoubtedly shed light on the importance of inclusive planning process. Joining us is Sri Sapnesh Chalika, who will be speaking on a crucial aspect of scoping before planning. His expertise in town and country planning will help us understand the necessary groundwork for an effective regional plan. A very special welcome to Sri Edgar F. Ribeiro, a veteran in the field of planning, who will be addressing the extent of the plan, constitutional framework of the people-centric regional plan. His vast experience will provide a critical, legal, ethical foundation for our discussion. We also have a privilege to have Sri Tahir Norana, an accomplished architect and planner, who will be focusing on eco-sensitive zone, not negotiable. His strong advocacy for environment protection will highlight the crucial role of ecological consideration of our regional plan. We warmly welcome Dr. Malini Krishnakutty, an experienced urban planner, who will share her expertise on a people's first plan in Kerala, citizen knowledge and climate resilience in Chittoor regional plan, offering a comparative perspective on preparation planning. Following this insight, presentation will have a closely panel discussion and question answer session with all 6 speakers, providing a valuable opportunity for further engagement for clarification. I concern Goa Nature, Goa's Future for organizing this timely and vital conference. The active participation of such esteemed speakers, dedicated activists, keen members of the press, and all of you present here today reflects our shared commitment to shaping a prosperous and sustainable future to Goa. I am confident that the deliberation today will be fruitful and will provide us with a valuable insight and recommendation for regional plan, ensuring that we safeguard Goa's natural beauty and cultural heritage for generations to come. Thank you once again for being here. I look forward to the enlightening session and discussion that will follow. Let's make this conference truly come towards building Goa's future in harmony with Goa's nature. Welcome to the Reflection on Regional Plan for Goa's Future conference. Let us get work on shaping a sustainable Goa. Thank you.
Thank you, Cruz Bob. Your interest and motivation provided to the team actually has resulted in organizing this event. I also remember last week there was I think a week before that there was a event at Panjim on Madai effect, and Engineer Cruz Silva was the only MLA who was present for that presentation throughout and interacted, and not only that, he again organized at his place in Margaon for the benefit of South Goa. So I think if all our MLAs show this interest and have these deliberations and involve such type of panelists, experts, social workers, politicians, as well as all other interested Goa'S, I think the planning will be a meaningful exercise. And precisely to understand all this from various angles, we have the panelists of various sessions and the last common panel discussion. Now I request Cadet Tahir to take over and start with the first session of the day. Thank you. Have a nice and wonderful day. Also, for those who are not much familiar with this place, the refreshments and all are organized in the basement. They have a mess over there, and please keep in mind that it is self-service, including I think cleaning whatever, like say plates and other things. So please follow the rules of this particular place and let us enjoy the day and go with enriched mind. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. So just a huge thank you for Engineer Cruz for reaching out to me first and saying, listen, there seems to be, people are talking about a new regional plan. Let's get people together and I'm giving you free rein to find the best experts in Goa and let's do something on it. And this was his idea. I am really grateful for it. Thanks to Professor Wag for helping with most of the logistics and just generally being a very reliable and helpful human being, always somebody that I can ask for help. And the other third person I think who has to be given huge amount of credit is my colleague Solano da Silva, who when I pitched this idea to him, he's like, let's do it. And he's taken on huge responsibility of coordinating with some of the speakers, making sure that everybody's presentations align with one another. And it's quite a thankless work that Solano has done, and I'm very grateful for that. Before I hand over to Solano to start off with the first presentation, I want to just briefly walk you all through the outline of how we have planned this conference. We thought we should start by looking at the past regional plans because people's memory is short, especially over something as boring as a plan. And so both Solano and Mr. Abhijit will talk about the history of planning in Goa, and as Cruz very rightly said, how things have gone wrong, and both of them have done a huge amount of research. I was sitting in the High Court the other day and Abhijit's case came up and his advocate was presenting and you can clearly tell the amount of study he's done on RP 2021, it is phenomenal. Following this, we will get two people who can talk about how planning must link to the governance of Goa. And we'll start with, of course, Sir Edgar Ribeiro, who has done master plans, local area plans, regional plans across the country. He's served as Chief Planner of India for 8 years. He's one of the senior most authorities on planning and particularly on participatory planning. So he will give us a vast depth of insight as to what the regional plan of Goa needs to be, including maybe some things that went wrong with the past regional plan. And then we'll take a small lunch break, then we'll get Swapnesh Sherlikar to wake you all up after lunch and, and talk about who the plan should really serve. And then after that, we'll end with, I will give a very brief statement on what I think is not negotiable in a new regional plan. And then we have one of the driver of one of the only plans, regional plans in the history of India that I think truly emerged from the bottom up, Dr. Malini Krishnakutti for the plan of Chittoor in Kerala. It's really a world-leading case study, and we are so grateful that she could come down from IIT Bombay and be with us today for this plan. My one request is, if you have questions, we've distributed notepads. We'll try to handle all the questions in the panel discussion at the end so that our presentations flow very smoothly. So that's why I've given all of the introductions now at the outset. Take your notes, leave your questions, and then at 3 o'clock when we sit for the panel discussion, many of the questions will overlap because the subject matter is overlapping with one another. And therefore, my one request is, unless you have an urgent clarification type of a question, if you have a deeper question, write it down, keep it with you, and we'll get to them when all the panelists are sitting together. Without further ado, I invite Solana Da Silva to the stage to speak about spot zoning and bulk zoning.
Thank you. Thank you, Tahir. Tahir is very generous by saying that as you can see, I can't do much. So it's Tahir actually who's done most of these things. He's very generous with his praise. Tahir has handled most of this, and we are very grateful for this. Okay, this time.
Tahir, do you want to switch off the lights? Some of the lights.
I want to ask for some help.
That works.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so these two panels, these two first presentations, mine and what Abhijit is going to do, is basically you can understand them by, we look back in order to move forward. What are the lessons we need to learn so that we don't forget and repeatedly make the same mistakes? That is the gist of mine and Abhijit's presentation. I will look at the first two regional plans, the regional plan 2001 and 2011. Abhijit is going to spend the time with his in-depth study of 2021. That is the gist of this. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, my presentation just has 3 parts. The first part is slightly different. I'm doing something that I've not done before, done it in classes sometimes, but not here, which is to look at why, first of all, let us be very clear why we need to have land use planning. And I know you will hear this again from the planners. We have excellent planners. I'm not a planner in the state, but an ordinary person who's coming from a very different discipline. What is the rationale for us without planning language, which we will learn and is important later on. And so that's the first part. The second part is basically looking at celebrating or recognizing what we did right. What did Goa do right? Why is Goa considered a pioneer? Many of us may not understand it because it's part of our common knowledge, but let's foreground that. And finally, let's go into what went wrong in 2001 and 2011 and what we need to learn in order to not make that happen again. Yeah. Okay, so I'm asking a question over here, which is first a very simple question, but a very profound question: what is land? And I'm using that, the responses to that, to then say why we need planning. So that's the logic of this first part. So once again, what does land mean to us? What is land? It's a fundamental question that economists have asked, anthropologists have asked, cultural studies people have asked, ordinary people, political scientists have asked, engineers have asked. We all ask this question, what is land? And but I just don't want to stop there. I want to link it to why does it make sense to plan land? That's where we want to go. So let's go ahead. Anyone who does even the basics of economics, and I teach engineers, but they're more interested in economics. Economists rule the world today. They get to make the big decisions. Scientists think they rule the world, but it's actually financiers and economists to get to decide how they rule the world. And economists have a particular way of looking at land. Anyone who goes to their first class in economics will learn this right bang there, and they will say that these are, for any production to happen, it requires the interaction of these elements, land, labor, and capital. These are the fundamental building blocks of all production activities. So this is something so basic, why repeat it here? Let's look at it slightly differently. First of all, we have to understand that when the economists put this land as one of the factors of production, they have a very simple equation. Y is equal to the function of N, L, K, okay, which is land, labor, capital. It's very simple. When these many economists themselves don't understand is that land is a short form for all the products of nature. It is not just land in terms of the physicality of land, but it involves the raw materials, the minerals, water, forest, the climatic condition, the fertility of the soil, the geographical location. All of the products of nature is what this, which just adds into one element in the equation, land is actually a short form for all of nature. And the insight that the early economists simply had is it's such a simple but brilliant insight that for any production to happen, humans need to do something with land. So for example, for me to make this table, I need to get a piece of wood, and in labor, human effort and ingenuity needs to be applied in order to produce this table. And that's true for everything. Everything that we have in this room, everything that we have, however complex it may look, okay, even plastic materials, everything is the product of nature. Everything is where humans have converted some element of nature and produced a product that is useful for us. Yes, so this brings us to a deep insight. It's so simple actually, but it's so deep that we forget it. That 100% everything that we produce is the product, it emerges from nature in some way. Nature is embedded in all of this. That means land is embedded in all that we produce. Okay. And now comes, if we are convinced by this is the 100% that we've written on the slide there. This is the big lesson. Everything we produce is recycled nature in some way. Land in a short form. And the implication for planning is this, we have a problem here. Land is finite. Land is finite. Now listen to this. The economists today will tell you that infinite growth is possible. And the physicists will tell you, but we live in a finite planet. This is a great contradiction. How can we have infinite growth? The politician will tell you infinite growth is possible. I will make you a land of milk and honey in a finite planet. See the contradiction? So therefore we need planning. We need to judicially. Such simple insights that land planning becomes necessary because land is finite and because we have multiple uses for it. We have competing uses for it. And we can take it a little further. As our populations increase, as our economy grows, it becomes even more important to maintain and manage a finite resource like land. Simply for production. If you're interested in production, you have to be interested in planning. Okay. Let's ask the question again. What is land? I'm asking this question again, and I want a different insight. I want to leave the economists aside, okay? And this is the insight that I got when I was trained as an economist, but then I was forced to do a course in anthropology to humanize me. And the anthropologists who are basically people who work deeply, take seriously people's cultural lives. They have a different view, which will be probably very close home for us in Goa. For them, land is not just a commodity. And for many Goans, and for many people, not only Goans, for many ordinary people, land is not just a commodity. Land is deeply linked with human identity. Who we are. If you ask yourself, or if you go outside the country and you ask yourself, who are you? We tend to associate who we are to a piece of land. We are an Indian, I'm a Goan, I'm from Salsette, I'm from this. You will find that the way we say who we are is linked in some way with land. People get very angry. Matra Bhumi. Not an inch will be given to our enemies. Why? What is there? Somewhere soil and blood are linked, and this needs to be taken seriously. Okay? So, land is a deeply meaningful system. Our history is in this land. It's a repository of history. It's not just something you can buy and sell. It's almost vulgar to do that, or to only do that. It is, our history is here, our suffering is here, and our dreams are also here. They are etched in this land. That's why land is more than a commodity when you ask ordinary people. That's why, for example, the Komunidats, which today there's a lot of heat these days, come from the Gaonkari system where land was associated with the Devi actually. The cosmology is very different, the original. And you cannot sell God because land and that God was one. So this cannot be grasped by economic thinking alone or by policymakers alone. And they find it too messy and they don't take it seriously. And then you get the problems you have on the ground that are happening. So land is deeply meaningful. It is the foundation for our social relations. It's the foundation for our identity. And so it's more than a commodity, it's almost sacred. It's almost sacred. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Look at this picture. It's a picture shared by our friend Frederick Norona. Shared this picture of this woman who looked at her own, this was my village. You may, I don't want to, something may happen to you when you see this image. Why do we undergo certain feelings when we see this? And it's precisely, if you have a feeling of upset or you're feeling distraught by looking at this image, imagine your own village and watching it go like that, while another end somebody is making massive amounts of super profits. You will also probably be sharing the same sentiment that land is not just a commodity, if you have that feeling running inside you. Okay? So then the question arises for planners, how can the economy reflect social values? How can social values be reflected when we plan the economy? How do we say that there are some things that we will not sell? Some things are not up for the market's logic. You don't sell your children, you don't sell your mother, There are some things that we don't put up for sale. Or when we see others putting up for sale, we say this is vulgar, this is not right. How does planning also needs to respond to that when it comes to land? What is it in land, where we will go and where we will not allow the market's logic to penetrate? And therefore, if you want to answer this, you need to be involved with planning. You need to plan land. Yeah, let's go to the next. Again, I'm asking the question the third time. What is land? And this time, we sit with the ecologists. And the ecologists tell us another story. And the story that they tell us is that land for them, so when you speak with ecologists and our friends around us, and there are many, and we meet them, and I don't mean these are people in institutions, these are ordinary people. They will define land as a shorthand for the very life support systems that support all of life, human life and all of life, land is the life support system, and they're not using the language of culture. They use the language of deep science to say, my science tells me the story. I don't need to study myth and, this. My science tells me the story that this is the very life support, the fundamental life support system of life. Clean water. They will tell you, for example, that there are so many natural processes, there are so many systems that, for example, are continuously creating clean air. They're continuously cleaning water. They're cleaning waste. They're producing the stability that we need in our climate. They're producing biodiversity, which is necessary for our health and for the things that we consume. All of these are processes that are going on. Land for them. And if you speak to scientists, especially really interesting scientists who go deep into this, they almost become philosophical. They almost speak like philosophers. They say life is a network. Life is a network. You cannot talk about life without talking about your connection with air, for instance. I shut that down. You will not have life. Life is a network. And it's continuously your connections with network. Trees and the way they survive is full of mycelium networks, all of these things. So this leads us to a deep insight. Again, there is an ultimate dependency. There's an ultimate dependency where nature is the ultimate sort of background of all of life. And life and the economy are merely subsidiaries of this. Life emerges from this. So this is a deep truth, and therefore, I will go to the next slide. So, if land is the last, your parents may abandon you, you'll survive. If this thing abandoned your society throws you out, you'll survive. But you can't survive if this is pulled out of your feet. You cannot survive. That's why it's called the ultimate dependency. And therefore, planning needs to respond to this. And planning needs to ask this question. And why does planning need to do this? The processes of nature follows its own processes to create clean air, water, etc. And production follows its own processes. And production processes are so fast today that nature cannot keep up. And there is what some call the great metabolic rift that is happening. This is the language that many people in science, and they're telling us this all the time, we're just not listening, it's not sitting very closely to us. So planning needs to say how do we manage land in order to support life support systems itself. So I hope, I'll stop here for this first part. I hope we are convinced about, or we have a set of arguments with us that convince us about the necessity of planning land and planning it judiciously. Sort of three responses to this. Okay, we'll go to the next part very quickly. Why is Goa a pioneer in planning? What has Goa done? Goa has responded to all of these questions back in the 80s itself. In the 70s itself, Goa responded to these questions because Goa was one of the first states to have the statutory zoning plans that cover the entire state. By 86, we already had it. Okay, so before that, Goa had one of the greatest sort of revolutions to ensure that everybody had access to land, secure at least access to land, with these land reforms that were created in the 70s and in the 60s and 70s. Right, go to the next one. But when it comes to planning, by 1986, we had a zoning plan that covered the entire state, which was the Regional Plan 2001. By 1987, we had uniform bylaws for all the municipal areas. Again, Goa had this. 1997, many decades before the Wayanad tragedy, we already had very strong laws about protecting non-development slopes, which today are completely up for grabs. Completely up for grabs. We had all these regulations. For instance, even I was surprised to learn recently that the regulation is so good. Everybody looks at non-development slope, but between 10% and 24.99%, there is restricted development slopes. Even there is a restriction to development. That means the only amount of land you can freely build is between 0 to 10% gradient. Only there is no restriction. You go above 10% itself, a restriction applies to you. When you look around in Panjim today itself, if you look opposite the hill slope, you need to wonder how on earth, what went wrong there and around the world. Okay, so Goa had put all of these systems in place, and we should be proud about it. Because of this, we'll go to the next slide. Because of this, many argue that Goa has a very different kind of urban fabric. We live, and this is news from sometimes many people, we are the most urbanized state in India. We are the most urbanized state in India. But our pattern of urbanization is such, it's the envy for the whole of India. Everybody wants to come here. Because their cities are unlivable. Because there was no planning done there, or planning was sacrificed. And because today you can live in a Goa that has all the best cosmopolitan life. My gosh, you can have a gin and tonic, watch this thing, fancy. You can have the best in Goa. At the same time, you have access to the best environmental systems. You have access to the Western Ghats, beautiful paddy fields close to you. Walk to a park, in 5 minutes your children can go to a wild space. Where else can you get this? And this is, for many, the result of planning. The planning may be derailed, but planning also delivered some of this. You have two different ideas of urbanity today. The possibility of an alternative urbanity emerges in Goa, something we should take very seriously. Okay, right, go to the next. Now, while saying this, what went wrong? What went wrong in these two plans? The first plan, RP 2001 and RP 2011. These are the dates when they were notified. RP 2001 was notified in 1986 and 2011 emerged in 2006. Let's go to the first one. RP 2001 was very broad brush. These are some of the limitations we should ensure that the future plans don't have. And some of this have already taken place with RP 2021. Extremely broad brush. See this is the whole of Bardez was marked out like this. It was a time when technology was not that advanced. Okay? And we didn't have plans like we have today, right down to each village panchayat and municipality. The planners knew this, and they said we will have outline development plans which were supposed to be for every part of Goa, which would detail out, because this was too broad. And then we were supposed to have comprehensive development plans where even the infrastructure lines would have been set here. We would never have this digging up again and again the way it is happening if we had comprehensive development plans. Because the sewage lines, the electricity lines, everything would be laid out. You would know exactly where your line is. But there is no interest to have this, because the only interest today is in zoning, changing of zones. That has become the political game today. Okay? So no listing, no people's participation was there. And this plan, even though the planners said it should have been updated with fresh information and fresh computing capability, it was not done. And why it was not done is my next slide. You will see that barely this plan was born, and within 2 years, an interesting argument was made. And you must hear this, especially those who love the sons of the soil. The argument was made in the TCP department and board that sons of the soil should benefit from this plan. So, Sundar sir, please explain. It was basically a hotelier lobby who said that the plan should be enabled, there should be a mechanism to allow case-by-case basis to be released. It was made by the hoteliers lobby and resulted in the destruction of all the sand dunes in South Goa, especially in the deep south of Goa. You will see all the permissions that were given initially to this were all for hotel projects. Very interestingly, using sons of the soil argument to destroy their own land and destroy such ecologically fragile areas of land. So be wary. We have to apply our mind when we make such arguments, and for what they are used and for who benefits from these arguments. And this opened the floodgates of massive amounts of spot zoning changes which are back today. From 1986 to 2005, according to the government's own admission, more than 12.7 square kilometers of land was changed. Right, let's go to the next slide. See, this is a very interesting slide which my student has helped me make. You know what it maps? It maps the number of these spot zoning changes that were made over time. Just see, it just accelerates. It starts in 88 and ends in 2005. It just accelerates. The blue bars, by the way, you may wonder what are those blue lines cutting across. These are all the changes in government. got the thing? Everybody jockeying for getting in charge of Goa, because the only charge that you want is the ability to change zones. Goa becomes the nightmare, the laughing stock of the whole of India because of its political instability. And it is related to this jockeying for converting land. This ends when Goa has governor's rule. We'll go to the next slide. In 2005, where an enlightened governor, an enlightened chief secretary, and an enlightened TCP secretary, a fantastic configuration. We should have, it's almost like astrology, where all these things come together. They shut this down. They realized that Goa's instability and the reason why Goa was not updating its regional plan and not creating a good plan was because this game was going on. Because every politician comes, I spot them, oh, change karo. I bought agricultural land, for how much? Hardly anything, man. Change it because I know the politician. Delhi teka paise, change kare, so right kare. This was the game going on, so there was no interest to even have a new regional plan. This ended with this notification, it came to an end. Let's go to the next. And this is the reason why we had the next plan. This is when the government got together and quickly created the next regional plan. Regional Plan 2011. This we all know the story, or most of us will know the story. It's the infamous regional plan. This plan did something else. Now spot zoning was closed. That window was closed. Governor had said this thing. There was a challenge also put, by the way. Many politicians got together and tried to revive it. That was also shut down. That did not go through. Okay? So now what he decided, piece by piece kita kare. We'll do en masse zone changes. And en masse looked like, this is by the way, the image is not very clear. The dark red images, this is just Tiswadi, the map of Tiswadi. The dark red areas were the areas that were added when a draft was shown to the public and a final version was created. The dark red areas are the ones that emerged when the final plan was notified. And you know the calculation we'll put on the next, I think there's, when the final calculations were done, and that too it was done with CAD, how much this government changed, or how much the TCP changed when they showed publicly a draft plan and the final plan was finalized and they compared the maps. The shocking figure was 72 square kilometers of land. And I'm not just talking land, I'm talking about prime real estate, all the hill slopes, all the places that have a view to the sea. This is criminal. This is criminality at an extremely high level. Of course, the people started a movement, the Save Goa movement that GBA was forward to, and brought this plan to an end. GBA, two petitioners had gone to the High Court. Okay. There were two petitioners, and GBA had demanded at that time, one important thing, a CBI inquiry at the scale of this. Couple of bureaucrats from Goa at that point of time, and some people very close to the government, took citizenship in foreign countries because a CBI, they were afraid of the CBI. That was the effect. But unfortunately, as civil society, we forgot to have that CBI inquiry. And those people who were architects of that are now sitting with this government. Go to the next. A few illustrative, I'll end with 3 illustrative cases. This is Tirakol. You must have seen Tirakol, what has happened. The whole village is taken over for a golf course. Entire village, lock, stock and barrel. Okay. The genesis of this is in Regional Plan 2011. See 2 maps down there. That was the draft, the first image and the next image. The draft image shows Tirakol as it was zoned. There is a small settlement area in purple. There is a fort demarcated with 1 box. And the rest of it is forest and agricultural land. Interestingly, under RTI, the GBA had obtained, who asked for the zone change? A company called Hansel Goa Private Limited. Please Google it, you'll find out who it is and you'll be shocked. Hansel Goa Private Limited asked for a change of zone in this, for Tirakol. They don't even come for the board meeting. That also is recorded on that. They don't even show up to make a presentation by them. But the whole of Tirakol is changed for this company. Whole village is changed for a company that is not even based in Tirakol. Where it is based also we don't know. Let's go to the next slide. This is Tirakol. This is my village. Pilan, we have a lake. Beautiful lake. That is that beautiful image with the flowers was taken by a Russian scientist who happened to come to our village. And she was working at NIO having some collaboration. She took this image. Thankfully, she took this image. Just a few months. Next month, if you look at the image, there's one image above which is yellow, green, and it shows our lake which is blue. You may not be able to see it. Regional Plan 2021 did such a fantastic job, they actually must have sat down with crayons, or their children must have sat with crayons, that even the bed of our lake they made into settlement. Even the lake they made settlement. And we saw the repercussions because that hill next to our lake became that. Do you see those images? 91 trees were cut and the hill was burned down for 3 days. And now this project is back. A few days ago, the project is now being pushed under 39A. The same illegality, the same person is being rewarded now because this is the commitment. This is the commitment, according to us. And tomorrow is the last day for us to file objections. We have already filed objections. Let's see what happens. Now, next case. This is an interesting case. And I'll end here. This is again in my village only. Again, Regional Plan 2011. You see, this is in Mara. Our village is twin. Pilan, Mara. Mara is the other village next to the industrial estate. The industrial estate is the area marked in purple on the right hand side. There is a sudden blob that appears. A sudden blob in the final regional plan, very small, around that circle which we have marked. That appears and a huge construction company comes up and we end up fighting a court case because we don't know what's happening to our hill slope with Ram Jethmalani. First, it was a local lawyer who we screwed because the lawyer, and we came to know, we asked a simple question, who asked for the zone change? The TCP could not even show us the applicant of the zone change. So what did that, that ink dropped over? While it's taking some ink drop. And we are seeing construction. And the sale of the plots and the villas was sold before becoming owners of the land. That's where they got caught. So the brazenness, and nobody gets caught for this. Nobody gets caught. Just to illustrate that in cases like this, regional plan did these sort of things, where not even applications were not even shown on paper, but zones were changed. This kind of criminality has actually been rewarded. That's my final lesson of this. I think we're done. Yes, okay, I'm done. Just 30 minutes. Okay, thank you. Save your questions for later.
Hello everybody. Yeah. While Dinah and Tahira just setting it up, I'm supposed to speak about what went wrong in RP 2021. In particular about how people's planning is required. But to start with, I think the first question is RP 2021 wrong? I mean, only then can we talk about how it went wrong. So, I've taken the liberty to start with the first section where we'll run through a number of images across Goa, what happened in the regional plan, and then we can move to the subject about what was supposed to happen and how it didn't happen, kind of thing. So that's the structure of this presentation, and yeah, I'll just wait for them to commence. Yeah. So we can start. Yeah. So it's it's the same fundamental question I think that's raised all the time and will always be raised, I would imagine, which is this tension in planning between public interest and self-interest, private interest. And I think that's where this whole thing lies. Yes. We'll start with looking at the regional plan. So I'll show you, run through slides of different villages. But before that, I'll present the actual statistics of settlement added in RP 2021. So every regional plan is accompanied with, is basically a set of spatial maps marking the zones, but accompanied with a report. And every report shows the area under each zone for each taluka. So Anna's gone ahead, and I think Solano, they have independently done studies, and what comes out of the study, okay, but I'll continue. So what comes out from the study, so all we have done is added the figures given in the reports of 2001 and 2021. And it shows that the settlement area in 2021 is greater than what was in 2001 by what we have found to be 11 crore square meters, which is 111 crore square meters, which is 110 square kilometers. So that's the amount of settlement which has increased, which it has increased by, okay? At the same time, we all are aware that the task force did a brilliant job of cleaning up the regional plan 2001, and at the end of the day, a lot of settlement area from 2001 was removed. And the minister recently made a statement that 6 crores, but we have never verified that. But going by that, it would mean that another 60 square kilometers of settlement was added, because the difference is 110 square kilometers. And if you have removed 60 square kilometers, that means the total amount which was actually added is 170 square kilometers of settlement. And we will see now, so this is the study, and we have it, and it can be verified from the reports. One. And just to, next one. We've done similar studies on 17.2 and 39A, just as a matter of comparison. They are just the changes which are now being, pushed by the government are about 25 to 35 lakh square meters in the whole state of Goa. So as a matter of comparison, the settlement area that's added in the regional plan is like hundreds of times more than what we are all gripped with at the moment. We'll just run through slides of this Wadi Taluka where we are right now, and you can see this is Adosi village. I don't know if it's visible. Entirely added settlements. On top of the hill, measuring in a big tens of lakhs of square meters, but also settlement added here, we'll see later. All of these lands are owned by builders. They are listed on the side, including ex-MLAs, I won't name them, but this is Adosi village, one. And similarly, now all of this is on the Kadamba plateau. Gaushi, you can see, entirely forested areas, all of these, and see the scale. This is on top of the hill, next to the plateau and slopes. The real settlement is down in the bottom, it's just a small strip. And you can see the area that's being added, one. And this is all in the regional plan. This is Karamboli, again, the same plateau, actually, I think, close to the archaeological, all of this is actually on archaeologically important areas. One. Chimbel, a lot of this is already under construction, and so this is huge amounts of settlement, all added on the Kadamba plateau. Old Goa is the same story. There are two slides, and all of these a lot of added settlements in green areas, and we made a list of the builders just on the Kadamba platform who are owners of the lands which have been changed to settlements. So that's, and it continues. Nevra, you can see, Nevra Piquen, Nevra Grand, both of them under assault. One. And all of this has been actually, these same slides were presented to the Chief Minister, the Chief Secretary, and the Chief Town Planner in big meetings. We have shown them this and they had no response. The Chief Town Planner says, after seeing the presentation, he says, I did not know the regional plan was like this. I don't understand what has happened. And you know, the expression on his face. But this is the reality. And Mangur, the same thing. So this is St. Lawrence Panchayat, and these are all, again, now, these certain settlement areas we've gone there and seen, and they are places where poor tribal communities cultivate vegetables, cultivate and actually survive on that land. Not on land records, not documented in the regional plan. Again, this is the lake at Bati, Goa'S, and settlements added all around, everywhere. And this is RP 2021. Shiridam, on top of the hill as you go by the highway on the left, you can see tribals cultivate those areas. I think everyone must have seen there. Even today you can see them. And these are all in settlement belonging to temples. So, you know, this is how settlements were added. Kurka Bamboli is the same story, huge amounts. Kurka Bamboli, I think, has the highest in this body amount of settlement added. 3 slides we have, move on here. Again, Meshe, forested slopes of hills. You can see the scale of settlement which is added. The existing settlement is very small over here. See what's being added in the regional plan. Gandauli, again, where Mr. Mudpecker's properties all changed into settlement. Kolin, industrial and settlement areas in dense forests, all added. So, just giving you a look at the whole thing. This is an interesting village. Gurpat is in Ponda, and in this village, the entire hill of about 15 to 20 lakh square meters demarcated as Film City, and in their through their khazans, there is a proposed road shown going nowhere. And it's only later when we got into the coal agitation, we have been able to figure out that in all the khazans around Nevra, that side, or this is in Ponda, there are 25-meter roads shown on the regional plan in preparation for converting these entire areas into coal handling hubs. So, all of this also, just to point out, has happened after the people's participation that the task force insisted on had taken place and the panchayats had submitted their plans. After all of that, this entire change in the plan has taken place. And the excuse the Chief Town Planner has stated in his report and has been always put up by the government is that this is because of 8,500 applications they received and which they considered and on the basis of which these things were changed. And yet when we apply under RTI, we don't get any of that information. And even in the courts, they said the information is missing. So this is what has happened without participation of the people. It's the same across, and I think we'll rush through these slides, but this is boring. And you can see these are amazing pristine plateaus, you know, forested all around. Khandepar, these are poor tenanted lands of poor people, cashew plantations where they don't have land rights. So you can imagine what's the implication. And again, this all bison area, all of this is amazing wildlife where local communities share the land with nature, and which are now being, you can see it's a forest, completely a bison area, you can see a bison crossing all here, also here. This is in Bethoda, and Dabriga gets like over 1 lakh square meters of his land marked as settlement. So this is happening across Shiroda, Kavle, there is a Dhangar families, there are a few Dhangar families living on this wonderful plateau. And they don't even know all their lands are marked as settlement and industrial zone. They didn't have a clue. So when we met them. So this is, move on, Khandepar, Bethoda, forested lands marked as settlement, tribals lose all their rights. Okay, so this is Keri, an amazing village where the SSZ struggle really, I think, was the strongest. This is again industrial zone, settlements added in a tribal village, who don't want it. Savoi, which is connected to the same Putkam plateau, which they all of them defend together, lots of settlements added, and obviously all of these settlements are for people who will be working in the industrial area that's shown. And that's the big question mark, what would that do to Goa in addition? But fundamentally, the land on the plateaus, this is very crucial for us to understand what does this land signify, what does this land do in the bigger scheme of nature. I think we have no clue about this, and that's a serious issue. And if you come now to Salsette, you can see water bodies next to Sal River, all marked as settlement, again owned by and this is across the board. Next, Benaulim, you can see low-lying paddy field with water bodies, all marked as settlement. Across here, right next to the beach, within CR, entire Varka sand dunes, these are pristine untouched sand dunes, okay, all marked as settlement, okay. This is another issue of roads being shown as 25 meters, etc. Actually stamping over churches and schools and houses and all of that. That's another issue to be considered because of the implications. Benauli, Mon, completely green area, completely shown as settlement, but Mon, Again, Kavelo says this is owned by a big hotelier and is shown as an ecotourism site. And he's been awarded with parking and roads on big sand dunes. Raya, this is a dense forest. This is actually, Sansadoy is right here. But this is actually the most important forest corridor in South Goa and South State because it connects all the forests beyond Raya, that is, from including Raya, Nuvem, Lotolim, right up till the Daboli airport. This is entirely areas where leopards, hyenas actually, even today, in spite of all the destruction, somehow managed to survive. But this becomes very critical because if you break this, then that's the end of all the life further on for so many villages. But there's no understanding of these realities of nature, of our own existence. This is Kurtorim, yes, Kurtorim. These are dense forests here, all shown as settlement, huge areas, again owned by builders. Velim Baradi Chapel, behind that wonderful plateau, completely swamped with settlements and industrial zones. So, all of these, Kolwa you can see on sand dunes, in paddy fields, huge settlements added, Siolim, forested areas, Kamulim in Bardez, it's got like, I think about 20 lakh square meters of added settlements shown in the form of all of these added blocks, and next one, and a town planning scheme covering the rest of the plateau and everything, but nobody knows for whom. But that's So, Nerul, I think, Penya, behind the Secretariat itself, the forested lands are all shown as added settlements. So, I mean, they don't even spare their own secretariat, you know. Race mongers, we know about that. Asagaon, everyone knows, but these are again big settlement lands that, in green areas. Shiolim, Asnora, Kitol has got large lands on the plateau shown for industrial areas. Kavre has got 5 mining leases, people are fighting it. Khola, tribal village under assault. Agonda is the same. Yeah. Koiguni, you can see industrial zones, settlements added in big way. In areas where there's nobody at the moment. And Pene is the same. Next one. Ankon, yeah. This mobile put is already done. Lolian, dense forest, among the most amazing headlands of Goa, where the Western Ghats kisses the Arabian Sea. And the most amazing things can be seen here. Entirely swamped with 4 ecotourism projects, each one allowing construction of up till 40,000 square meters under the name of ecotourism. So also now look at Palien. Palien in Perne, amazing headland again, plateau going out to the sea, and more than 5 lakh square meters of pristine land belonging to Desh Prabhus. And you can see how the settlements are marked. And that's very interesting. The settlement shapes are not broad. Now this is a very interesting one. The settlement shapes actually follow the land ownership. So a particular person's land is changed while similar land just adjoining it is not. So this is a fundamental issue in this whole thing, the absence of uniformity. So I think we'll run through this very quickly. Number of, if we are just showing examples of these changes are all for big builders or hotel owners. So gold resorts have got like 28,000 square meters of land, which is now free for development. These are Durga builders in, they own real estate and so on. So I think we'll quickly finish this. Too many slides. Indian Hotel, Wellington. See, just stop here. This in Sernavati are fantastic sand dunes, and exactly the sand dunes are marked as settlement because they are owned by Wellington resorts, right? So, ecotourism in Kabilosim, owner is East India Hotels and so on. Next one. A number of them are also owned by politicians or their relatives, but I don't even want to get into that. But it's bringing this out only to show that in the regional plan, all of this private interest of land speculation was very clearly brought in, and not at a small scale, across the state. And this has happened much after the involvement of the task force of the people was over. This happened in the office of the chief town planner when he was finalizing the plan. So, it is criminal. Sorry. So many slides, and all politicians, etc. Like this one, the present TCP minister got more than 5 lakh square meters of land, absolutely green, added in settlement with roads and everything. So all of them. So, sorry, that's a lot of slides. So what went wrong? How did we reach here? Next one. We'll have to quickly look at the TCP Act to understand what went wrong. And the way we see it, the most important provisions are Section 10 and 11. Because these are the provisions which govern how the regional plan is prepared. So Section 9 is when the government instructs the chief town planner, so that's not the planning. And beyond, Section 10 and 11 are primarily the operative provisions. So Section 10 says the chief town planner shall, after carrying out such surveys, as may be necessary of the physical, social, and economic conditions and potentialities of the area in respect of which the regional plans to be prepared under Section 9. Prepare a regional plan along with a report. Yeah, next one. So Section 10 requires the chief town planner to carry out studies, surveys of physical, which is environmental in today's world, social and economic conditions and potentialities. So that's what he's supposed to do. And Section 11 kind of shows the contents and a very important Section 11.2a, on which I think is the soul of the Act, which determines how the demarcation should be done. And we'll start with that 11.2a. 11.2a says that the chief town planner is empowered to carry out broad demarcation of areas for agriculture, forestry, mineral development, urban, rural settlements, other activities. Broad demarcation, and that I think is the soul of the planning process, because broad demarcation would directly prevent arbitrary zone changes, would require the planner to prepare a set of guidelines and criteria and apply them across the state in an equal way for everybody. So this is what this is all about, and this is the only thing which really ensures planned development, sustainable development, all of this, and of course, compliance, conformity with Article 14 and 21. Because arbitrariness is not possible when you're doing broad demarcation, that's key. And then, following that, there's a whole lot of things that the chief town planner is supposed to demarcate, which includes prevention of erosion, start from here, reservation of lands for recreation, natural reserves, reservation and development of areas of natural scenery. So, see the scope of the work that the chief town planner is required to do. This is just the beginning: natural scenery, forest, wildlife, and all of that. Preservation of objects, features, structures, places of historical, archaeological, or scientific and educational value. He has to protect them. So move on here. And prevention of erosion, provision for afforestation. Okay, all of that. Waterfront areas, irrigation, hydroelectric work, flood control, very important. Flood control, prevention of water pollution. So, and a whole lot of other things like roads, highways, and all of that. But we are focused on, the ecological side and the social aspects of what the plan is going to deliver. And I think this is what needs to be delivered as stated in the Act. Move on. And what actually happened, if you see the task force report and if you also see the regional plan report, it becomes very clear that a lot of the data was not available. And so Section 10 was not really fulfilled. And that's a fundamental what went wrong answer. And this is something that we must ensure happens properly, because you see, there's no data like for the groundwater recharge areas. So if you don't know where your water is being recharged, and these are the areas may not be required to be protected statutorily, but these are areas that have to be protected if you want water. Okay, so groundwater recharge areas, flood control. What is the 100-year flood? And what are we heading towards in the future? But all of that data was not provided, and the task force has clearly stated that a lot of data is not there. But I'll just run through what we feel should be there. Agriculture, erosion, carrying capacity, tribal lands, common lands, the comunidad lands, fishing villages, the fishing communities, tenanted agricultural land, etc. All of this information, I think, should be available with the government and and should be available for the chief town planner to prepare a proper plan. Not just, but you see, this is what should happen, but there's the other way. And the other way is, I think, what really is the simplest, which is people preparing their plans. Where all this information, which is actually the local information available with the communities, and which the government today is not willing to, not able to collect. I think the whole people's participatory process seems to be the only way to overcome this situation. And that, I think, is where again the whole thing went wrong. But let's see from the statutory angle, from the TCP Act, what went wrong. So data was not there, and also today the final CZMP is out. The Coastal Zone Management Plan of Goa is out, and when you see the plan and when you see the regional plan, it becomes very clear that so many sand dunes, khazans, mangroves, etc. are not shown on the regional plan, are very often shown as settlement. And so it becomes very clear that the data was not available, or probably the chief town planner also did not consider, but also the no development zones along the rivers, they are not mapped. So there's a whole lot of things not mapped because the data was not available. But there's also this fundamental issue of incorrect data, and I think the economic data becomes crucial. And so if you see the GDP, that's shown. Next one. Yeah, I think we move on. Okay, just move. Yeah, okay. If you see what the government has got data in terms of the GDP, this is in 2007 or 2008 when the plan was being prepared. They say 32% of the GDP is contributed by the manufacturing sector, 16% by transport, storage and communications, another 15% by finance, insurance and real estate, and like 10% by agriculture, forestry, fisheries all put together. From my perspective, this is completely rubbish. Okay? Because in terms of production, finance doesn't produce anything. So I think the government doesn't understand what is economic production to start with. And also, if I produce something and consume it like most of the indigenous people in Goa do, and that is sustainable living, is produce your own, what you need, and use it. Maybe if you have extra, you share it. None of this will ever show up. And what happened to the foreign remittances? Doesn't show up. Nothing shows up. So this is all false, and this is very fundamental. Goa economy is dependent on foreign, has been, this is on ground when you see families, one person goes abroad and sends money, that's how you come out of financial trouble or whatever. So, not considered, and that's very important to understand that the workforce of Goa is abroad. So, if you're going to create economic opportunities in Goa, you are actually displacing the local communities. So that's a fundamental issue that should be understood. Groundwater, there is not a single study available with the government on where our water is. So when Mopa Airport was planned, we got Aquadam from Pune, one of the premier water institutes in the country, and they have done a study which is brilliant, and it shows that plateau has more water than the second largest dam in Goa. About 40 perennial springs, about 10,000 people living off water, gravity fed to all their agriculture and everything. So amazing natural water towers which are not understood. And so you see all the plateaus and the hill slopes are now shown in settlement zones in the ignorance of the reality, you know. Yeah. This complete absence of data on agriculture, and I think the concept of food sovereignty has to be understood. It's most fundamental because in Goa we have always had it, and that's the strength of our culture. That's from where everything emanates, all the good stuff. Only if you're sovereign with your own food can you speak freely. You know, so I mean, yeah, that's. So there's a lot of data which is missing. The fishing communities, the fishing villages, etc., are not mapped at all, and those are all now shown for tourism. Housing data, I mean, this is very fundamental. 2011 census said that we have 26% excess houses, or 26% of the houses are permanently closed in Goa. So that's some data that has to be taken into account. Yeah, floods again. This is very critical, I think, because now with the state action plan for climate change, 2023 to 2033 in our hands, it's very clear that we need to. You want to move to that? Because we're taking a lot of time. Yeah. I'll just show you what the state action plan for climate change is saying for Goa, and this is extremely, I think, important. 14.73% of Goa's land is going to be affected by floods and climate change, sea level rise. The state action plan says the regional plan must be redone taking this into account. And all even development permissions granted in these areas, which are, they have even mapped them, and you can see Bardes, Tiswadi, Salset are the worst, and these are the areas where all the development is being planned. Okay, so it says that even permissions granted must be reconsidered. But also, I think you have to go further. What happens to the communities who are living here? So you've got to plan for relocating them. You know, so all of that has to come out of the action plan. It's not even a policy, it's actually an action plan, has to be implemented. But so, you know, the flood areas were not mapped. So all of the data was missing. Can just go back a bit. Sorry. Yeah. Just back further. Quickly we'll run through this. Sorry. Okay. I don't think we should. The absence of data is quite clear. I don't think there are a lot of slides. We won't look at that. Move on, next one. Yeah. So we'll just quickly look at, you know, the most important part, which is what happened with the people's participation. I mean, let's just be very clear. The TCP Act does not have any provisions. It was 1974. The 73rd Amendment was 1993, and the Act has not been amended. It doesn't have what is required, I would believe, in terms of Article 243(7) ZD, where spatial planning has to happen at the grassroots level, but that will be covered. But in terms of what went wrong, what went really right is what the task force did when they sent it to the villages. And that was amazing, that was a revolution. I would really call it a revolution because there are so many, I think all the villages in Goa, there are people today who understand what a regional plan is and what planning is to quite a large extent. Thanks to this step that was taken, and people diligently participated. Of course, there are powerful people like the Panchas and MLAs who would at the end try to change and bring in their vested interests, but a lot of villages submitted brilliant plans to the chief town planner, which were completely ignored, and that's where it went wrong. And you can see, for example, this is the same village of Keri, and the villagers actually mapped every square meter in a brilliant way. And you know, it's a perfect plan, but completely ignored all the added settlements and industrial zones, etc., reflect that. So, like just a couple of examples of how the villages. So this is Agosi, and you can see what they did in this, and everyone handled it differently. So the Agosi, Gram Sabha, and the committee, and eventually the panchayat. The plan they sent was the draft plan prepared by the task force and sent to them with notes. And the notes said what should be the correction. So they asked for some settlement to be reduced. They asked for a road which was shown through the Khadam, which is the coal highway, by the way. They wanted it removed and basically more environmental protection. So that was an amazing submission. And then you see what happens. Settlements added everywhere, road retained through the Khadams. Nothing was considered. And so, what is the legal position? And the Supreme Court has very clearly said in a number of its judgments, and this is one of them. I don't know if you can read all of it. Democracy cannot exist unless all citizens have a right to participate in the affairs of the polity of the country, and it goes on. It's meaningless unless the people are informed, and eventually the fact that for democracy to really be there, people have to be making their own plan, have to be participating in this process. So that's how it should have been, but it did not happen. But it can happen much better. But fundamentally, people's participation, which was initiated by the task force, was brought to a zilch by the chief town planner by ignoring all the submissions and making a completely different plan. That's what happened. So we are in a number of matters in the courts. Just go back there. Next one. So in the courts, there are a number of things which are coming up from the submission of the government. And this is a different issue. Sorry, I'm come to the slides are out of the place, so I can't see much. But a very important aspect of planning. All the plans we saw of this area of the Kadamba Plateau, the response of the government is why were the settlements added? Because they were shown in the ODP. Okay? So, because it was shown in an earlier plan, it has to be shown again. And then every added settlement, they think, okay, this was gazetted change. It may be a eco-sensitive area, but now you maintain it as a settlement zone. Okay? Or if you are granted some kind of a permission, which even if it's expired today. So, in this manner, a lot of settlements were added, and this is a fundamental threat also in the future. But when as a necessity for our legal matters, we have researched, and we have found that the Supreme Court has been extremely clear and uniform in its judgment that when there is public interest involved, or when it's a legislative act, promissory estoppel does not apply. Past commitments do not apply. And it's a very simple logic. Your past commitment is to an individual that I will do a certain thing. But then you are required to do something else in public interest. In that case, the public interest will supersede the past commitment. The past commitment doesn't hold. And this is the fundamental correction that has to happen, without which all the changes which have been promised in the ODP, even after they are scrapped quashed by the High Court, they will still remain as past commitments. And that is extremely serious. But the Supreme Court is extremely clear that when there is public interest involved, or when it's a legislative act, and the regional plan is a legislative act, then past commitment does not apply. Okay. the RP 2021 report. We just take a quick look at what went wrong in the report. And in the report again confirms what the task force had said, that they asked all the departments for information, but their response was extremely lukewarm, if not cold. Data was not available. To date, certain departments have submitted incomplete data while others have just not responded, due to which the RP division was left helpless for want of accurate data. So this is what they say. And then this is a fundamental, again, issue with the regional plan. All the earlier regional plans, the 2001 and the 2011, treated natural cover and forest identically. So natural cover was treated as an area which cannot be touched, and this is 2001 report. Areas under natural cover forests are normally situated on more steeply sloping land, the average slope more than 33%. Because of their physiographical character, they are highly vulnerable to erosion, and as such have to be kept under permanent vegetal cover as far as possible. It is therefore recorded that these areas should be treated as areas of ecological conservation. And even 2011, natural cover and forest are treated together. It's only in 2021 that the entire natural cover areas of Goa were brought down to Eco 2. And that really hurt, because when those 8,500 applications were seen, it is very easy to say that, oh, this is barren land, this is not really a good, useful land, let's change it, because it's in Eco 2. So that, I think, was a fundamental, very well planned insertion change in the policy document. And next. Yeah, and the other two examples that we can bring up is the introduction of ecotourism zones, where you need to have a minimum plot area of 2 lakh square meters, and you can build up to 40,000 square meters, 10% of your area, that is. And this is like concrete structures. So, in the name of ecotourism, huge landowners whose minimum land had to be 2 lakh square meters could build hotels. Okay, and if you see ecotourism policies across the world, United Nations or wherever, ecotourism has to be done by the local person from his own existing structure. You don't need to construct anything as far as possible, So, but ecotourism has been used in RP 2021 to pass all the projects like the Tirapol one, the 4 projects at Lodian 1 and Kavadosi, etc. All of these projects which were opposed by people, and therefore they knew that if they were shown as settlement, there would be a huge approach. So they said, okay, we'll show it as natural cover, but put a small thing as ecotourism, and then bring in this policy allowing construction up to 40,000 square meters. So MIZ was another one more. What went wrong? Yes. We are in the courts. We've challenged the 2018 notification which brought RP fully into force. Our prayers in the courts are that a new RP should be prepared, and in the meanwhile, the restrictions of 2001 and 2021 should both be enforced simultaneously, so that we are protected till we prepare a good plan. This is just to brief you on what the situation. There is an order dated 26 February 2019 in a matter where the government has stated that we will not misuse RP 2021, blah blah blah, but they are doing it. But thanks to this whole process, from 2005, I've gone to the villages, I've spent a lot of time with villages, and very interestingly, when we first went RP 2011, fight was on. In the village, people would say, "Oh, Batkan Zomi Mikriati Korudata." The landlord has sold the land, what can we do now? And that's when, through the discussion, everyone understood and came to the common understanding that it's not the land ownership, it's the land use that determines everything that we are so interested in, that's so much a part of us. All of that is determined not by the ownership but by the land use. And that understanding is there at the grassroots. And today, when we meet local communities, when we have the discussion, they all come with a very simple way of doing planning. And you may say this is ideal, but you see, shet asate shet, bhat asate bhat, ran asate ran, and gav asate gav. Thank you so much.
I now invite Professor Edgar Ribeiro up to the stage, who will talk very briefly on planning. Sit down. Yeah, I'll bring the chair down.
In the rush, we missed a few slides, and I think one important slide was on the ODPs. The ODPs were kept out of 2021, and that is a very fundamental flaw, which I should have pointed out, but yeah, we're rushing through the slides and I skipped it. Because ODPs have 1/3 of Goa's population, and I think you cannot do a regional plan without the whole state being considered. The ODP areas take a lot of resources from the rest of the state and also give out a lot of negative byproducts, whatever, and so it has to be a part of the regional plan, and I think that's something that we must correct. That was a fundamental flaw. Sorry for this. Sorry, Edgar.
Thank you, Dave.
Edgar's going to talk about the sure.
Thank you for this opportunity to present with so many important people.
Just
Yeah. Something about myself. I'm a Shankar of Sagula, but I belong to the diaspora, being born and brought up in Bombay. Goa was a great place during the vacations. The first 30 years, about myself, the first 30 years of my life, I spent in studies, the area of my field being urban and regional planning. There weren't too many opportunities here, so I had to go to UK and getting experiences there. I came back, and because I had that kind of a training, it helped me in my career in government in the next 30 years. You got into government laterally, and from where I got superannuated. But the first thing I learned was, when I got back, please forget whatever you learned abroad and get down to the ground. Things are so different. But anyway, it helped me in my career. The 30 years, the next 30 years was after superannuation in consultancy, etc. And now 90 plus, from my Balcom, I read very depressing news, and despite the best fights that all of you are doing, it seems to be in a bit of a mess. But I was intrigued to read the other day against this very spirited fight against ODPs and the epoch-making decision by the High Court, the Bombay bench of the High Court of Bombay, the Goa bench. The an opportunity was given to either have a 4-month window to fight the case in the Supreme Court, but it was the government, to which the reaction of the Honorable Chief Minister has been, no, I'm opting for a new regional plan. So that's the first thing I would like to say. In my opinion, there is no provision for a new regional plan. And I will give you from my experience, I have to get back to MPD master plan for Delhi with the first comprehensive plan in the country. And in that plan, which was for the period 61 to 81, for that you had a lot of homework to do, get your governance pattern in order. That is to say, the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, the Improvement Trust is upgraded to the Delhi Development Authority under a new act, the Delhi Development Act, the amalgamation of a small local bodies into one, and the improvement of the slum acts. The relevant acts were upgraded. That was the first action. And then it led to this master plan. It was preceded by what you call an interim plan or an ODP. And so I'm coming to that point too. But when this plan was prepared, up to the period 61-81, you had to prepare a new plan, take it forward to 81-2001. And there was a gap. And a lot of developers felt, oh, now the plan has come to an end. So we have an opportunity to all the reduced growth patterns to be thrown aside. The legal opinion was no. Once a plan is in place, it is in place. What you can do, you have to upgrade the perspective. And this was important for me because in the period 81-2001, the upgraded plan was my responsibility and my accountability as Planning Commissioner of the DDA. So we did that plan too, and the gap was taken care of improving the perspectives. I mention this because this is the same experience we used in Goa for when the Deshpande plan of 81-2001 came to an end, and you had this whole problem of what to upgrade with the plan, which was started in 2007. For that period, 2001 to 2007, the arrangement was, there was no question of no plan, the plan had to be upgraded. Now, the other point was that when we came to the ODP system, the development plan, Goa said, you need to freeze areas which seem incongruous. The stress was on spot zoning incongruous, not freeze it with the intention of keeping it there for all time, but with the intention of giving them a longer leash to sort of get back to the parameters of the plan when prepared. The stress was an ODP is purely interim plan. ODP is a one-time exercise, a very short window exercise, which should never exceed more than a year. And that's what was happened. And the main thing was get back to then called the master plan. The things we learned then was uniformity. An ideal period for a plan perspective was considered 20 years, then according to international practice. The plan's flexibility was meant you upgrade the plan every 5 years, and here is important, as and when required. And it is a participatory plan. This formula has been used all across India based on this single experience. So this is one aspect I would like to stress here. So two areas which I've tried to answer now. The whole question of preparing ODPs, revised ODPs, and giving it a long leash, as it is being thoroughly misused in Goa, is illegal. And I think, and a lot of it has been done by the fight which you all have been putting up against it. Now, coming to the other things, I have to talk about India. Because in 1947, they say we gained our independence. On the 14th of August, Pakistan celebrated its Independence Day. We did it on the 15th. But really, it was the partition of India. And it was in this partition of India where action had to be taken between the period 1947 to 1950. In other words, two actions were on. One is the great Sardar Patel exercise of amalgamation of what existed then, the three presidencies, the provinces, and about 560 princely states into an entity of center-state relationships. So this he did, very important. The second was the exercise of under Dr. Ambedkar for writing the Constitution. The Constitution, which came into force in 1950, had two things. It had the Constitutional Act, and it had the Constitutional Act, which has about today nearly over 100, 120 amendments and upgradation. The most critical of it was what has been talked about here, the 72nd, 73rd Amendment, which strengthened the whole question of participatory development planning. And along with it came, so what did we inherit? In 1950, we inherited law and order as per the ongoing British system. The law and order and improvements of their administration to keep it going. But we also had a new thing called the plans, development plans, by the Planning Commission. So it was law and order come planning. The Planning Commission, through 5-year plans, concentrated on socio-economic development, not spatial planning. They said because spatial planning was part of the municipal and local government functions. So these were the two things that happened. Under the various acts, so we are functioning under 3 lists, which all of you all know much better than me: the central, concurrent, and state list. The subjects which only the center legislates on, the subject where the states legislate, provided it's not in conflict with central, and the most important ones for us are heritage, education and health, and those which is entirely in the state list. Quite clearly, town planning, municipal government and slums are in the state list.